guys, welcome to Bookmas Day 8. Yikes. So if you're following the calendar that I had put out just at the end of November, I guess, today is supposed to be my favorite fantasy and science fiction books. But as I was creating my list, I realized I have a lot of favorite science fiction books. That is a genre that has snuck up on me and has quickly become one of my favorites. So I'm going to do my science fiction books in a separate video, and today is just going to be favorite fantasy books. I'm not sure exactly when the science fiction books are going to be. Possibly the space on my calendar that I had intentionally left blank, which I feel like was maybe like the 14th or something. Or else it might just happen in the new year or end of December. We'll see. But it will be coming because I have a lot of favorite science fiction books apparently. I only currently have in my possession 3 of my favorite fiction fantasy books. I mean, I'm borrowing a few out and don't own all of them. That's what I'm realizing. We're gonna start the list off with what I think is like my first adult YA, I think this is an adult fantasy book that I ever read, as an adult at least. Like I can't even think if I ever read fantasy as a kid. I have now since read a lot of children's fantasy, YA fantasy, but like it's just never been my genre, and it's still not like a favorite of mine, but I do have some favorites in there. And the first one here is Mark of the Raven. So I read this I think about 6 months before I started booktube, so this would be like 3.5 years ago. This is definitely a possibility for my list of rereads for the end of this month, because I remember just loving this first book. The rest of the series, not as much. It's a trilogy, but we follow a girl who, she's like a young woman, I can't remember, she's like 16 or 18, which makes me feel like it's a YA book, but it really isn't. And the content in book 2, like it's Christian, it's clean, but like some of the stuff that's alluded to, I definitely feel like it's an adult series. Okay, so her name's Lady Selene. She is just becoming like the age where she's kind of gonna be the head of her house. Her house is the House of Ravenwood. It's always been led by women, and she finds out at the beginning of the book that her house has the power of dream walking, and so they can enter people's dreams and they use it to assassinate people. Like all this time she didn't realize that her line was just a bunch of assassins, and it doesn't sit right with her. So she wants to not follow in the path of her mother and the mothers before her, but that doesn't go over well either. And then she's commissioned to assassinate this one person, and she has to make a decision on whether or not she's actually going to do it. Is she going to listen to her family, or is she going to prioritize what she feels is right? And now it got overly bright. This is the thing with winter. It's like, it was minus 41 this morning when I woke up, which is the same in minus 40 is the same in Celsius and Fahrenheit. But by the sun, you would never guess how cold it is. Yeah, so I really enjoyed this book and the series, but like mainly this book. Next up, I have 2 books by the same author. I think these are both considered young adult, Christian young adult. The first one I have here is Romanov. So this is a historical fiction fantasy where we follow the Romanov family as it was back in, does it even say the year? I don't remember when this took place. Oh wow, a long time ago I used to use old Care Bear cards that I had changed, and I used these for my TBR. I would pick my TBR from these, and that just fell out of here. I don't think I have the rest of them. I should check. Maybe I should do like a flashback TBR. Anyway, Romanov family, but there are elements of magic. The family has access to magic, which a lot of Christian people, the sun's really gonna bother me. It's a little bright. Some Christian people do have issues with the magic element in here, and some love it. I am part of the group that loves it. What I really appreciated about it is I hadn't read anything about the Romanovs before this, and it made me do some more research on them. It made me really like their character and how kind they were even, and like this happens in this book and it happened in real life. The Romanovs were so kind that the people that were guarding them, because they were under house arrest, actually became sympathetic towards them, and they had to change out the guards on a regular basis because they were worried they would be too kind to them, which is just crazy. Man, I really want to reread all of these. By the same author as Romanov, Nadine Brandis. I also love Fox. I'm currently borrowing this one out to a teen girl in my church right now, so I don't have it with me. The cover though, so gorgeous. And same with Romanov, like some of the best covers. In Fox, we are historical fiction fantasy again. It is the story of the Gunpowder Plot following Guy Fawkes, except our main character is, I'm blanking on his name, Guy Fawkes' son, which I don't even know if he had one in real life, but he does in the book. And it's in a world where there is a stone plague. People are slowly turning to stone. Guy Fawkes' son is one of them. And there's also like a magical element where people have masks, and depending on what color your mask is, that is the color that you can control. And I was just fascinated by the entire book. I was in England many years ago already, when I was living there as an au pair during November 5th. So we were there for bonfire night, saw all the fireworks. And so when I was reading this book, I was like brought back there, and then the fantasy element, and I really enjoyed it. Let's just stick with the YA fantasy. And like none of my YA fantasy like screams YA, it's just like an age thing. I just finished this one recently. This is The Queen's Rising. I shared this in a fairly recent reading wrap up. In this one, we are in a world where there's kind of like two main countries, and one where we're starting out is just like a nice kind of country. The other one is known to be really ruthless, and our main character, her parents were one from each country. She's currently living in like the nice country, and there they have this thing called, they have passions. So there's 5 passions. They're art, music, dramatics, wit, or knowledge. And at the age of 10, many girls, and I think there's boys too, this was just an all-girls school, they go to a school to study this passion for 7 years, and then when they're 17 they're tested and they are told if they've mastered their passion and pass or not. And so our main character, she spends the first 4 years of her 7 years hopping between the passions, and then she eventually settles on one and studies that one for 3 years. And we kind of start with her when she's right about to test for her passion, and there's lots of different things going on between the countries as well. And she has, the magical element is the fact that she is receiving memories from her ancestor, and so that she has to use that knowledge to try to help the country. Yeah, really enjoyed this. It is a duology. I'm still torn on whether or not I'm going to read book 2 because I feel like this one wrapped up really well. Another fantasy book that I really enjoyed, and I'm just realizing I should put this on my wish list because I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's Duel of Fire. It is actually quite a long series, and I did read a few of the books and I felt like they kind of just progressively got worse, but I really enjoyed book 1. This has magical elements related to the elements. So our main character their family has abilities because of fire or related to fire. And man, it's been a long time since I read this book, at least 3 years. So the details are all fuzzy, but I really remember thoroughly enjoying it. The audiobook was great, but I feel like I need the physical copy to reread it again. I know that our main character, at the start of the book, she is really into fencing, like sword fencing, and she at the time doesn't have the power of her family due to fire. Yeah, there's lots of different things going on, like politically, and I need to reread it so I feel like I could share about it a little bit more, but I think a lot of people would enjoy that one. One that I just read, also in a wrap-up recently, is The Legendary Inga. I've been talking about this one quite a bit since because it's on my wish list as well. So in this one, like the first chapter is just captivating, and I love it when a first chapter, first sentence, first paragraph, like I love being captivated right from the beginning. So there is this monster, I think he's kind of like a dragon, it's never really clarified, although I think that's what it is, that is haunting this castle. All of a sudden he's kind of like eating a person at night, and in the start of the book the king's guards are trying to fight him, trying to kill him. Whoever kills him is going to marry the king's daughter, and the king will adopt him as his son, kind of thing. And so the king's guards are chasing the monster into the forest, and there's someone in the forest that has a wooden sword because, I guess, unknown to everybody else, the monster couldn't be killed by metal or by magic, and they have a wooden sword. Kill him. They bring this person before the king, and the king's like, yeah, I'm gonna make you my son and you're gonna marry my daughter. And the person is like, that's not really possible because I'm a girl. So yeah, and the king just doesn't like to admit he's been wrong, so he's like, yeah, no, you're my son. And like everybody has to play along with him because he's been known to be a little mentally unstable in the past, so everyone just goes along with it and they're like, just pretend for a while and maybe this will fizzle out. Yeah, so then we follow Inga, our son of the king, from there. It's really enjoyable. I really enjoyed the book. Can't wait to read more by that author. And the last one I'm going to talk about is Sanderson's Warbreaker. I actually feel like a lot of his fantasy books are fairly on the same level for me. Warbreaker is the one I like the most, although going back at my rankings on Goodreads, I actually rated Elantris higher than Warbreaker, but Warbreaker sticks with me more, so I don't know, sometimes ratings can be tricky. So this happens in Sanderson's Cosmere, which is really cool. Like, he has so many different series and books, and they often are in the same world, but you can't really see it for a long time. He'll leave like little breadcrumbs here and there. It's all very fascinating. My brain can't keep track of that many things at one time like his apparently can. Yeah, so we're following two sisters. One is the oldest, and she's like always known that she's going to be married off, like kind of for political advantage. From what I can remember, it's been a while again, but it turns out right at the beginning that the second sister actually goes off and does this, and she's always been like the wild one and not one to like conform to what's expected of her. And so that can make for some interesting conversations or situations if the oldest daughter had been the one that had gone and married off. The book would have played out very differently. It would have been much more boring and she might not have lived. But I really enjoyed how Sanderson used the personality of the second daughter to really change the outcome of the book and even like the feel of the book. Okay, so those are my top fantasy books. I've come to realize that I'm much more of a science fiction reader than a fantasy reader, which fascinates me because I wouldn't have expected that, or I kind of always lumped them together and didn't realize how much more I would enjoy science fiction. So lots of recommendations coming up there soon. Let me know some of your favorite fantasy books. If you can't tell from this, I'm not big into like super in-depth magic systems or worlds. I don't want to keep track of all of that, I guess. I like it to be fairly light on the magic fantasy elements, but I would love to hear some of your recommendations. Thanks for being here, guys, and I will be back tomorrow.